The fastest wins in Magnus Carlsen'S career. Once a wise man said, "At that moment I felt like a god," and that man is nothing less than a god on the battlefield of 64 boxes. He's the 5-time world chess champion Magnus Carlsen. When he taps into his god mode, it's as if a lightning bolt from the heavens has been unleashed. His mind races ahead, effortlessly calculating moves with incredible precision. Each gentle movement of his fingers sets the chess pieces into motion, their intricate dance guided by his formidable intellect. Want to witness the remarkable speed of Magnus Carlsen? So stay tuned until the very end of the video to see the breathtaking display of genius as he conjures lightning with the mere flicker of his fingers. We're diving into this epic battle between Magnus Carlsen and FIDE master Espen Agdestein, and trust me, it's a rollercoaster ride from start to finish. Let me introduce you to Espen Agdestein, the former manager of none other than the ex-world champion himself, Magnus Carlsen. Espen is also the brother of Simon Agdestein, who happens to be a chess grandmaster and used to coach our very own Magnus Carlsen. Magnus kicked things off by moving his pawn to g3, making his intentions known, because Agdestein responds with d5, going for the king's fianchetto opening. Both players are showing their moves, getting their starting pieces into the game. Now here's where it gets interesting. Magnus strikes the centre by moving his pawn to e4, putting some serious pressure on Agdestein. The tension builds as more pieces are developed and both players make their casting moves. Suddenly, a set of pawns are traded off and the plot thickens. Agdestein starts tapping the table immediately with a piece. I can practically feel the nerves building up, but Magnusson remains calm and focused, bringing his knights into the game, lining them up ready to launch a deadly attack on Agdestein's king. Magnus plays his pawn to h6 and the tensions mount even higher. It's like a chess thriller unfolding before our eyes. Magnus brings his queen into the mix and Agdestein makes a grave error, taking Magnus's knight. Magnus seizes the opportunity and brings his rook into the game, eyeing Agdestein's king. The checkmating possibilities are lurking around the corner. Agdestein tries to defend by moving his knight to f6, but it's no use. Magnus takes Agdestein's pawn with the bishop and forces a trade in peace, bringing his queen closer to Agdestein's king. And here it comes, the killer move. Magnus moves his rook to g6 and Agdestein is left scratching his head, trying to find a defense. But Magnus is relentless, taking Agdestein's pawn with his bishop, and before you know it, it's a forced checkmate, game over. The crowd goes wild as Magnus Carlsen proves once again why he's a chess mastermind, and he did it all in a mere 18 seconds. Can you believe it? Magnus Carlsen, the speed demon, destroys his opponent like a chess tornado. Incredible stuff. Magnus Carlsen versus Sergey Karjakin, World Blitz Championship 2012. The game kicks off with Magnus swiftly playing his pawn to e4. Sergey responds with e5 and before you know it, they're driving into the Roy Lopez opening. Magnus, being the seasoned pro he is, trades a knight and bishop and instantly develops his knight like a boss. Now Sergey decides to castle, leaving Magnus pondering his next move for a brief moment before casting his own king. The game progresses and Magnus cunningly attacks Sergey's knight, only to be met with a counterattack. But Magnus retreats his piece, leaving Sergey scratching his head for what feels like an eternity. Then out of the blue, Sergey blunders by not snatching Magnus's bishop. It's the beginning of the end for him. Magnus takes advantage of the situation, placing his pawn on g4 to attack Sergey's bishop. Sergey unfortunately makes another mistake by retreating his bishop. From here on, Magnus begins a ferocious assault, skillfully maneuvering his pieces closer and closer to Sergey's wide open king. Sergey tries to defend himself by moving his knight to e6, but Magnus grabs the open file, ready to unleash an all-out attack. Sergey senses the trouble he's in and starts chewing up his time, contemplating his moves. After trading knights and bishops and going back and forth for a while, Magnus decides to trade rooks, bringing his queen into the game. It's getting intense. Sergey tries to fight back, but Magnus has a sneaky plan up his sleeve. He plays queen g6, delivering a check and winning a pawn, and guess what? He goes on to snatch a rook too. With a few more shuffles of pieces, Magnus sets the stage for the final blow. He moves his pawn to f6, threatening checkmate after qg7, obliterating Sergey's hopes of victory. But Karjakin resigned, game over. And guess what? Magnus did all this in style, with almost 2 minutes still left on the clock. Can you believe it? He only spent around a minute to defeat the Super Grandmaster. That's Magnus Carlsen for you, lightning fast moves, incredible strategy, and a clock that seems to be his best friend. Magnus Carlsen versus Bill Gates. Magnus decides to have a little fun on a talk show called Skavlan. And who does he end up facing? This time he's up against none other than Bill Gates, the billionaire, but Magnus is about to pull off something truly mind-boggling. In just 12 seconds on the clock, he's going to give Bill Gates a run for his money. In this blitz game played in a cosy studio in London, Carlsen is handed a mere 30 seconds on the clock, meanwhile Gates gets a luxurious 2 minutes to make his moves. Seems like a fair match, right? Well, not when Carlsen decides to work his magic. The game kicks off with Bill confidently playing e4 and Magnus responds with a slick move, placing his knight on c6. Bill counters with his knight on f3, thinking he's got it all figured out. But wait, Magnus swiftly strikes back with d5, putting pressure on Bill's precious pawn. Now instead of taking the bait or letting his pawn be snatched away, Bill comes up with a third option. He defends his pawn with his bishop, trying to play it smart, but even Magnus isn't fooled. He moves his knight to f6, cranking up the heat and adding even more pressure on Bill's pawn. After a bit of back and forth, the pawns are finally traded off and Magnus's queen enters the game, making her grand entrance. His pieces are starting to come alive, while Bill seemed to take a little snooze. Then, just when Bill thinks he's got a brilliant plan, he launches an attack on Magnus's queen. Magnus swiftly sidesteps, leaving Bill scratching his head in confusion. It's like a comedy of errors on Bill's part. In this moment of utter perplexity, Bill decides to castle, and that's a blunder. Magnus's pieces are already closing in on Bill's king, and now he plays bishop g3, putting a double pin on Bill's poor queen. As if that weren't enough, Magnus brings his knight into the game, and Bill, falling for the bait, takes Magnus's seemingly free bishop. Now with everything seemingly safe in Bill's eyes, little does he know the game is completely lost, and just like a beginner's move, Bill takes Magnus's knight. Magnus delivers the final blow with queen h2, declaring checkmate. It's game over for Bill Gates, and all of this happened in just 9 moves. Can you believe it? Never underestimate the power of Magnus Carlsen, even when the odds seem stacked against him. With his lightning fast thinking and a twinkle in his eye, he proves that in the realm of chess, time is just a number, and as for Bill Gates, well, he might need a little more practice before challenging the master again. And that's all for now. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next exciting episode. Take care, and we bid you adieu.